Hi, I'm Sarah Westbrook, a yoga therapist. I teach Align and Refine classes. And in those classes, we break down poses and I give you options. There's different cues that you would use depending on your anatomy and depending on the movement patterns that you've either trained in or come to you by birth. And I help you figure out which one works best for you. So let's take a look at boat pose. Navasana, that's a tough pose. And the traditional cues for that are to try to use the abdominals instead of the hip flexors. Well, that's a perfectly valid cue if you tend to overarch the back too strongly. But it's not a good cue, and it's not going to be helpful if you tend to tuck and your low back tends to have more rounding. So how do you know? So let's sit in Dandasana first, which is the same 90-degree angle that we tip back to in boat pose. So we'll start upright. And when you're in this position, are you sitting on your tailbone? Is your pubic bone ahead of your hip points? Is your low back poking out backwards? Are the vertebrae sticking out back? And if so, I want you to bend your knees, kick your heels down into the floor, and then without moving your heels, pull back through the heels. So the heels are dragging towards the buttock. At the same time, the heels push out slightly. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to be off your tailbone. The lumbar vertebrae have moved forward into the body, and your pubic bone and your hip points are now on the same plane. Now, you're in neutral pelvis. Now, you may have to stay with this knee bend for longer than you'd like, because bending this end of the hamstring and shortening and engaging it allows this part to release so that the upper hamstrings aren't tucking your pelvis under. So to further help this shape, push down into your hands. That activates your back muscles via your latissimus muscles to keep the arch in your low back. You're dragging back through the heels, and the heels are isometrically spreading apart. From there, you can lean back and pick up the legs and then see how that feels. We're trying to get the grip out of the front of the hip. To help that, bring your hands to the backs of your thighs now. Pull the skin of the thighs outwards. So you're widening the hamstrings, a little internal rotation to help the hip joint center, and then push the thighs away from you, trying to bring your belly button closer to your thighs. You're actually not using your rectus abdominis quite so much. You're not tucking, and you're trying to use your back muscles to hold your back upright. To lift the feet, your quad muscles will have to work to straighten the legs and lift. Staying here is a great way to do the pose. Keeping the knees bent is better if when you straighten your legs, that upper hamstring shortens, right, and tucks you under. So again, you'd shorten the hamstring at the back of the knee to release the upper hamstring and stay more on your sit bones in the pose. And then eventually release the hands. Okay. Now, how about for those of you who like boat pose is easy, you love that, and you actually hate its sister pose, which is the half boat. So if you hate this one, when the low back is on the floor and you're trying to lift up, and you'd rather do the upright one, that's a clue that the low back probably tends to overwork in the pose. The hip flexors tend to overwork in the pose. So again, I'd want you to bend your knees and kick the heels down so you're shortening and engaging the hamstrings more. Push into your hands, but instead of pulling back through the heels, I want you to drive your heels away and feel how that tones the abdominals and reduces the lumbar curve. Keep pushing the heels away from you as you release your arms. I still want you to drag your heels isometrically apart. So you're not using the TFL. You're not getting so much grip at the front here. You're feeling the work come to the outer side of the hip instead. And then from there, you can lift the feet and rise up. And then when you come into the half boat pose, right, it's about getting the low back to touch fully, which may feel much more possible after setting up the pose this way by pushing the feet away and isometrically widening them. All right, release all the way down. Feel your breath. How was doing the pose in these different ways? How did it work for you? What did it reveal to you about the structure and tendencies of your body? And how does having options give you permission to do poses in the way that works for you, knowing that there isn't one correct way to do any pose, that part of crafting your practice is just like the art of crafting your life. Use the cues that work for you, learn from the poses that are hard, and come to my class to figure out why. Why are some poses hard? Why do some actions not work for me? How can I make peace with some of these really difficult poses? So I hope you'll join me Mondays and Fridays at 9:30. For those classes, you register through yogaview.com. And then join me on Saturday, because for my Saturday class at 10 a.m., not only will you get the live stream, but you get a recording of the class. And so even if you couldn't make the 10 a.m. time, you'll still get the recording. Anyone who registers gets the recording for the Saturday class. To sign up for my Saturday class, go to my website, yogatherapywithsarah.com. I hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching. Namaste.